opening comments, please.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those at Century 2, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room or the GoToMeeting comments box. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking, but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
Thank you, and I just realized that I don't think I officially called the meeting to order, but we are in order. First on the agenda, we have the minutes from our December 3rd meeting, and it appears as though John McKay was the only one that was absent.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Foster moved to approve. Mr. Hartman, second.
That was Mr. Warren.
Oh, Mr. Warren, okay, I saw you raise your finger.
I just had a,
Okay, Mr. Warren moved, Hartman second, and Mr. Foster, you have a comment?
I just have a few typos I'll pass along to staff.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments or typos? Hearing none. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, same sign, and we have one abstention. So it'll be, I think, 901? 1001? Okay. Fair enough. We'll start going through the agenda with the consideration of the subdivision committee recommendations. The first item, the Riverfront Village, has been deferred. We'll move on to subdivision 2020-00060, one-step final plat for Hakuna Matata Acres. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
My apologies. No comment from Century 2 on this case.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, we'll move on to subdivision 2020-00062, one-step final plat for No Walk Acres Edition. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? There's no one. Is there anyone in Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
No one at Century 2.
Thank you. And is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, we'll take that one on consent. Moving on to item 2.4, 00065, one-step final plat for Youth Horizons Second Edition. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
No one at Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Youth Horizons Second Edition. Hearing none, we'll take that one on consent.
I move for approval of items 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4.
4.
It's been moved by Mr. Hartman, second by Mr. Hicks. Are there any Nicks, that is? Is there anyone that has any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Move on to vacations. Vacation 2020-00047, it's a city vacation of a portion of platted Bonnie Bray Street right-of-way located approximately at 8302 East Kellogg. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
No one at Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case?
This is Melissa Haverkamp. I'm virtual and I would like to hear this case.
Okay. We will hear that case. Moving on to vacation 2020-00048. It's a city vacation of front building sidewalk, back, and a drainage and utility easement located at US 54 and 263rd Street West, approximately. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
No one at Century 2.
Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case?
Yes, this is Kevin McCollum, 14205 West Remington Lane. Would like to hear about this case.
Okay, we'll take this case. Moving on.
And Jeremy Shrug on 1830 South Bonanza Circle. Would like to hear this case.
Okay, we will hear that case momentarily. Moving on with to the public hearings, item 4.1, it's a conditional use for 2020-00036. It's conditional use to allow an event center located at 4103 South 183rd Street West. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case?
I'd like to hear this case.
Okay, we will hear this case. Moving on to the next one, PUD 2020-00009. It's a planned unit development case for 169 South Belmont. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing no one, is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
No comment from Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case located at 169 South Belmont? Hearing none, we'll take that on consent. Next item is PUD 2020-0010. It's a zone change to create a new Vassar Apartments planned unit development, PUD number 78, located at 1701 through 1715 North Vassar Avenue. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
There's no one at Century 2 to hear this case.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, we'll take that one on consent. The next one is zoning case 2020-00044, zone change from rural residential to SF20, single family residential. It's generally located at 311th Street West and 15th Street South. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case?
I'd like to hear this case as well.
Okay. Moving on to the next one, zoning case 2020-00045, zone change from single-family residential to multifamily residential, located around the intersection of Maple Street and Hoover. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Mr. Foster and Mr. Hartman. Okay, we will hear those cases. If we could get a motion.
Move for approval for items 4.2 and 4.3.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Nix to approve the two cases 4.2, 4.3. There was a second by Mr. Hartman. Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, say nay, please. Hearing none, we will, all those in, motion carries unanimously. So, first case here.
Good morning, Commissioners. Philip Zievenbergen with Planning Staff. The first case before you today is Vacation 2020-47. Wait till the presentation catches up here. The applicant is requesting the vacation of a portion of the Bonnie Bray Street right-of-way in between two properties that the K&H Hospitality, Inc. owns. Those properties are zoned LC Limited Commercial. This property is located on the north side of East Kellogg and a couple blocks east of South Rock Road, as you can see on the map in front of you. The South Bonnie Bray Street was originally platted as part of the Ruth's Addition in 1959, and because of the property owner owning both sides of the street right-of-way in question, there was no need for any additional people to sign the vacation petition. They have right to petition the vacation of it solely into themselves. And should it be approved, this portion of Bonnie Bray Street will be reverting back to the lots that it was dedicated from on either side. South Bonnie Bray Street at this location is not a through street. If you go to the aerial image, there's actually, you can see it kind of right where the top of the red box is. There's a median that was put in place some time ago to prevent through traffic from going from the commercial area fronting Kellogg into the Bonnie Bray neighborhood to the north. The city traffic engineer commented that it was very unlikely for this connection to be removed. There's actually city stormwater drains in the connection in that median as well. There is a 30-foot easement on the property that's going to be retained. You can also see with the many colored lines, the blue line being city water, the lime green line being city sewer, and the brown line being city stormwater. All of those are public utilities in the line. There's also private utilities in the area for vacation, and so an easement will have to be dedicated for the entire portion of the right-of-way. The applicant is requesting this right-of-way in order to provide additional parking. As he stated in the subdivision committee meeting last week, the property on the east side of the Bonnie Brae right-of-way, so on the right side of your screen, he intends to open a new business in there, and he's looking for additional parking for that business. The subdivision committee considered this request last week. They voted a 6-0 recommendation for approval. There were several members of the public who spoke in opposition to this case. Their primary concerns where there seems to be certain activities that are not really high on the moral standard, I guess, for lack of a better way to say that. That happened at the motel that's on the west side of the Bonnie Brae right-of-way, and their concerns are that if there's additional parking in this area, that's just going to give more space and more room for certain activities to continue. They're concerned about the parking of semi-trucks and potential things that happen when semi-trucks are parked overnight. They're concerned about just exacerbating the current situation that seems to be occurring at this location, should this not be public street right-of-way anymore, but become part of the private property of this owner. As I mentioned before, subdivision committee did consider this, and they did recommend approval, and I can stand for any staff questions.
Do we have any questions for staff? Hearing none. Do we have anyone with the agent or applicant that would like to address this? Agent or applicant?
I haven't. I don't know if I've seen
Mr. Patel? Okay, it doesn't sound like there's anybody here on behalf of the applicant. Okay. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to address this case?
No comment from Century 2 on this case.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? If you would please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
I have a comment.
Okay.
My name is David Stark. My wife and I live at 8314 East Peachtree Lane in the Bonnie Brae neighborhood. I'm a member of the Homeowners Association where I serve as treasurer. My property is located close to the vacated area, but not directly affected. I do hear street noise from the Kellogg Access Road and from the hotel parking lot. Noise from an additional parking will certainly add to the already noisy activity. Semi-trucks frequently leave the refrigeration unit run all night, making it difficult to sleep. Although the property owner has indicated that the adjoining building to the existing street in question will be a retail business, we have no idea what the hours would be, and if closing time were to be extremely late hours, it would make only the parking lot noise additionally annoying. My thought is if the property owner is interested in being a good neighbor to the residents directly to the north, perhaps a substantial solid barrier erected by the business would solve the problem. A barrier tall enough that would prevent anyone from climbing over and strong enough to keep someone from driving through. As with any residential area, we're genuinely concerned about safety. And since we in Bonnie Bray have experienced some criminal activity, presumably to be spilling over from the hotel, such as individuals climbing over the residential fences and indications of drug use, we can only assume that that might increase with an additional business. A substantial privacy barrier of height and strength from the west to the east running the length of the associated business would certainly be a step in the right direction. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. If you could hang on just for a second. Is there anyone on the commission that has a question for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony.
Yes.
Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address this case? I'll call for it again. Is there anyone virtually that would like to address this case located the Bonnie Bray Street right-of-way?
My name's Melissa Haverkamp. Oh, did someone else want to go first?
No,
Go ahead, Melissa.
go ahead. You can.
Okay. I live.
If we could have your address also, please.
Yes, I live at 405 South Bonnie Bray Street. My property butts up directly to the area that we're talking about. I'm on the southwest corner of Peachtree and Bonnie Bray Street.
Okay. All right.
I won't repeat my concerns from last time. I think David Stark was pretty good at delineating those. I would like to just kind of make the comment that when this was considered on the last committee, they had basically said that they could, or that they would expect the owner of this property that this land would be vacated to comply with all landscaping and zoning rules, including keeping a 6-foot barrier between the residential areas and his property. My concern is that the 6-foot fence that was put up initially, which has been since I purchased this property and moved in 2008, it was long before that. It has not been replaced and it is in disrepair to the point that my husband and I are having to look at using our own money to build another fence in front of it because it's literally falling over in spots. And so my concern is just that to relinquish this property to this person and expect them to comply when they're already not complying would, it just seems a little bit disingenuous to me. And I would like to request, and I don't know legally if it's possible, that a much more substantial barrier be built, especially to exceed the 6 feet. We have problems with people throwing drug paraphernalia into our yard and trash, and people climbing over the fence at times. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Haverkamp. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to ask her any questions? Yes, Mr. Warren.
Is your property back up to the hotel, or are you at the property to the east?
I'm the property to the west of there. It backs up to the hotel.
Back up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission on this case on the Bonnie Bray Street right-of-way?
Yes, my name is Ron Hole, and I live at 8315 Peachtree, and my property backs up to that motel that Mr. Patel owns, or his business owns. And I'm not going to repeat what Dave said because he did an excellent job, but I will want to emphasize that I've had experiences as well with the fence to the point where I had to pay for my own 8-foot fence to be put in place. Well, after that was put in place, some of his patrons decided to drive through my fence. It's the hotel, and then I want to, one more point to this is the hotel didn't have enough parking, so they went to the zoning commission and got a exception and asked for more parking. So there's a record of this parking issue with the hotel, and now this what used to be a furniture store to be a new business. There's not enough parking over there, and it just aggravates the situation for people to park and truck parking, and it's that due to the Kellogg expansion, those businesses don't have enough parking. And it's going to be a problem, increased problem with more business over there. That's all I have to say to this.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to ask the speaker any questions? Hearing none. Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission on this item? Go ahead, caller. If you could state your name and address for the record, you have 3 minutes. Well, maybe not. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to address the commission? Hearing none, I'll bring it back to Philip. Did you have any further comments?
I was going to say, we heard several of these similar comments at the subdivision committee, and I brought up Jeff Van Zant with, who's our city attorney, to talk about the legalities of the scope for which you as a board could, in terms of applying conditions to the approval of this and the scope for which that you can actually do that.
Okay. Yeah. I was wondering, they've been parking on Bonnie Bray. Would they have needed like a minor street privilege to do that? And if so, did they have one?
I don't know if they had one or not. They probably would. You know, really what I was focusing on, I can't answer that specifically.
Okay, all right, yeah.
What they've done in the past, because I didn't check for that. But to be able to, you know, it is paved, to be able to park on that would have required, you know, permission from the engineering department to be able to do so, since it had been blocked off some time ago. The question that came up in subdivision, I want to reiterate here, is the scope of the conditions which can be imposed on there. We've heard a lot about fencing. Any condition that you place on this application is subject to only the application area. The one individual or company, I'm not sure exactly what, owns property to both the east and the west, additionally to that. Since that's not subject to this application, we can't impose standards on that additional property. It would be subject to what the code provides or what was allowed at that time. Presumably that they maintain a 6 foot, at least a 6 foot privacy fence between the commercial and residential areas. If you wish to impose a higher standard, as been recommended by some of the public, it can only apply to that area that encompasses just the body bray of that application. That makes sense.
Okay. Are there any questions of Mr. Van Zant before he slips away? Okay. We'll bring it back to the commission. Yes, Mr. Warren?
Mr. Chairman, I was just in case the applicant came online while we were having that on, well, I think we ought to check and see if they're back in place to give a rebuttal.
Good point. Mr. Patel, did you ever come online, or anybody representing this case? Doesn't appear to.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
He was
McKay.
president of subdivision
Yes, he was.
and did speak to these same questions.
Yes.
And I would be curious to know if somebody could give a rundown of his comments, since he's not here today, could they give me a summary of what was said at the subdivision committee by the applicant?
I'm trying to recall from last week. I apologize, I don't have.
I know that he was agreeable to the requirements that were expected of him.
Right, we did
with that
update the
60
conditions
foot.
of approval that, you know, this area would have to meet the requirements of the zoning code because once it's becomes private land, it would assume the zoning of limited commercial, and so it would have to comply with the zoning code regarding landscaping and screening. I mean, that's generally a given, but we actually specifically stated it in the conditions of approval, and he was fairly agreeable to that. I don't think there was really a lot of detail. He didn't necessarily speak too much more than that.
Correct, yes.
Did he by chance speak to the fence issue that these neighbors are complaining about?
Not necessarily. And the thing about that's actually out of the scope of this case. So, I mean, that's really more of an enforcement issue for those properties, and it's really not germane to, because really all we're focusing on is that portion of the Brownie Bay right-of-way, and if that fence is not in disrepair, you know, that's really the scope of this case. Any other fencing or any other type of screening that's in disrepair or any issues related to what's in between the hotel property and the backyards of these houses is really more of an enforcement issue outside the scope of what this hearing is about.
Yeah, we have Mr. Cox here in the audience, and maybe he could address that specifically, because I know that Mr. Van Zant has already said that the only thing that we have control over would be the 60 foot of right-of-way, or however wide that street right-of-way is for Bonnie Bray. But with regards to the fencing on either side of the street right-of-way, that becomes a zoning and enforcement issue, does it not?
Good afternoon. Yes, that's correct. J.R. Cox, Metropolitan Planning, for the record. Yes, it would be an enforcement matter, and we would, I have it now, we have a complaint, but we would, you know, someone could call us with a complaint, and we would be able to deal with that. In that general area, over the years I've been involved with this position, we have had various opportunities to have corrections made to fencing out there. The frontage along Kellogg's relatively old, and some of those fences are relatively old and possibly installed by the homeowners. There are some properties out there that predate the requirement for fencing, for screening fencing in Wichita, which was mid-'74.
Okay.
So, but yes, we'd be happy to take a look at it, and if in violation, and I think these properties we're talking about probably would be.
Thank you.
Furniture store might be an exception. That hotel, I think, certainly would be required to have screening fencing. The old furniture store to the east, it might predate, but okay. we'd be able to determine after investigating.
Okay. Mr. Warren, did you have a?
Well, I guess one of the questions I had is do you have to be an owner of the property to call in a violation? I mean, obviously, the people that oversee this don't know about it unless someone complains. Do we have the right as a body to complain to the city that a violation occurs and encourage them to go in and make whatever actions are necessary to remediate the fencing problem that obviously is there?
If you're asking me if I consider this a valid complaint as of now, the answer is yes. So okay. no, anyone can make a complaint.
Anyone can make a complaint.
You could drive by and see something, and of course, in your case, you would happen to know it's a violation. Others might not. And yeah, you could call me and we'd take a look at it.
So we can instruct staff to file a complaint on our behalf that we're aware of a violation and have the staff.
You could do that, but as I said, I'm already it's, as far as I'm concerned, I've heard 2 complaints, so.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Foster?
Two thoughts. You know, in our discussions, we often have clearly verified enforcement issues that come up and that are brought to our attention. I'm curious if there's a method that those would be recorded from our proceedings and then passed along to staff. We've never talked about any kind of a formal way to do that, but I think that's what should be done, frankly. I mean, we're all here for the improvement of the city. We might as well do our jobs, and let's deal with the enforcement piece of it. The second item is specific to this case. Typically, the solid screening requirement would be 6 to 8 feet. And I would think in this particular case, we could go ahead and require 8 foot as the height, given the information and the testimony we received. Is that something we could do?
I believe so.
Thank you.
I could be corrected by legal counsel, but since we're getting a thumbs up, apparently it's okay. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, John?
But didn't legal just give us the fact that we're only dealing with the right-of-way and that's all? That we
That's
could
correct.
require the 8-foot fence,
That's
nothing
correct.
else. Okay,
Yeah.
I just like to make that clear because all the complaints that we've had is about not necessarily this right-of-way, but it's everything that's happening both directions away from the right-of-way. So I just wouldn't want us to, I don't think that's our job to get into enforcement of codes and stuff at that point in time. That's up to the code department to do so. Ours is to say, we either approve it or disapprove it and put some requirements on that piece of property, and that's all.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit off base, so I guess I'd like to bring it back and see if there's any other discussion on this item.
My question, I heard the concern that there might be inappropriate activity during the night, and there is requirement for lighting if the addition in this property in question is parking. So can we put some requirement on the lighting that would increase the lighting's covering of, I don't.
Again, we're just dealing with the
Can-
right-of-way, so I don't know if we know what they're gonna do with the right-of-way.
Wasn't it to add parking as the purpose of the right-of-way? So parking lots require adequate lighting to minimize the adverse impact on the neighborhood, which could be the safety issue?
I'm not sure that's correct.
Okay.
I'm not sure they're required to provide lighting. I think if they do provide lighting, it can be limited.
You
So
know,
it doesn't spill into the neighborhood, causing a
Okay. It's
Lighting
usually
light problem,
protect.
which we hear sometimes.
lighting's important. Some people don't want lighting, lit their bedroom up at night with lights from a parking lot, so
And we've,
it's kind of a two-faced sword.
And
Again, I think we need to deal with just what we got in front of us.
and we had that complaint out there a few years back, actually, not from this particular property, but another property.
Okay,
We
thank
have new
you.
security lighting, and it certainly was.
Any other discussion? Go ahead, John.
There is presently a fence over this right-of-way anyhow, a 6-foot fence going across it.
Going from my aging memory, I think that's correct.
No, I just went by this morning to make sure before I opened my big mouth today. There's a fence, there's a 6-foot fence. I'm not saying it's in good shape, but I said there is a fence there now already, which really is in violation of the right-of-way to begin with.
My opinion only, I'm gonna guess that when the city closed those streets, the city put that fence up. But
It's there.
my guess only.
Any other discussion? Hearing
Mike,
none.
can you hear me? Jewel?
Yes, go ahead.
I think that we ought to stick to the request at hand. With that being said, I agree with the comments that Mr. Foster made about this, that staff should be aware of the testimony that has been submitted to us. That's all.
Mr. Foster?
I'm prepared to make a motion,
Okay.
Vice Chair. Staff did add, as Philip mentioned, the requirements for screening the landscape, so I would support the staff recommendation and vote for approval with the addition of requiring the fence up to an 8-foot height.
Got a motion by Mr. Foster and second by
Mr. McKay. Mr.
John.
McKay.
Okay. Any discussion?
I
All in
have a
favor,
quick
say aye.
question. Is your motion to require a fence up to an 8-foot height, which would include 6 feet, which is what is currently there, or is your motion to require an 8-foot fence?
An 8-foot fence.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay, so if we're clear on the motion, it's to approve with the fence height to be an 8-foot privacy fence or screening fence. Anything else? Okay, if we could have a vote on that. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously, and I apologize for having to step aside for a few moments. We had virtual school issues at home. Moving on to the next case.
Yes, vacation item 2020-48. The applicant proposes to vacate a portion of a platted drainage reserve and a portion of a 50-foot platted building setback on a property that is platted as Lot 3, Block A of the Yoder Airport Edition. As you can see on the map in front of you, this is located south of US 54 Highway, and it is 1.5 mile west of South 247th Street West. It is zone RR Rural Residential. The purpose of the vacation is to create a buildable parcel. You go to the aerial image. The majority of Lot 3 is covered by the drainage reserve, and as you can see on this aerial image, much of that drainage reserve is for drainage purposes. There's already a pond on there with a creek inlet kind of to the north that feeds into that pond. Much of that drainage reserve is within the FEMA floodplain. The applicant is requesting the portion of the drainage reserve that is outside of the FEMA floodplain. If you go to the site plan, it might be a little hard to read, but the site plan does indicate there is a portion of the drainage reserve that is outside of the FEMA floodplain, and that is what this application is for. The plattish text of the drainage reserve states that no building shall be constructed on or within the drainage reserve, nor any fill, changing grade, creation of channel, or any other work to be carried out without the permission of the engineer or the governing body. So in order to build anything within the drainage reserve, they would actually have to drain it or change the plattish text. So if they take it out of the drainage reserve, then it becomes an area they can build on. The plattish text no longer applies. In addition to the vacation for the drainage reserve, they're looking to vacate a portion of a 50-foot platted setback. They're looking to vacate the western 20 feet, which would bring it down to a 30-foot building setback, which would be considered a front setback along the street right-of-way. The zoning code sets the minimum front setback for parcels in RR to be 30 feet, so with this vacation, they are actually still in compliance with the zoning code had it been a zoning setback and not a platted setback. Evergy has equipment in the drainage reserve, and really the comments from them, they have no objection to this, they just need to know how they can supply this lot with power. And so the comments coming out of Evergy and that were discussed during subdivision committee was that the applicant just needs to work with Evergy on how to supply this lot with power. There may be the need for a utility easement that has yet to be determined. There is a condition in there that does talk about, I changed one of the conditions that talks about, if any easements are required, that they be provided to planning staff before it goes on to the governing body, based on Evergy's comments. There were no one who spoke in opposition to this case at the subdivision committee hearing, so I have nothing to pass on to you regarding the comments from that, and I can stand for any staff questions.
Do you have any questions for Philip? Hearing none. If we could have the agent or applicant, if you could state your name, address, and you have 10 minutes.
Chris Rose with Baldwin Company, 315 Ellis, Wichita, Kansas, 67211. The applicant agrees with staff comments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, any questions of the applicant? Hearing none. Thank you and stand by. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to address this issue?
Yeah, no comment on this case from Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? Was there anybody virtually?
Yeah, virtually, this is.
Yes, please, go ahead and state your name. And
This is Kevin. Yeah, this is Kevin McCallum, 14205 West Remington Lane. I own lot 3, just north of where this proposed reduction in the setback is set up. And I believe there's a few of us on the call here that have concerns about this. The first off was kind of neighborhood congruity. So this is a live at air park. So there's an east side, west side. Along the east side, the minimum setback of any house or structure that's been built has been about 140 feet from the road. And on the west side, I would say at least 180 feet from the aerial views. If you look at the furthest northmost house, it's almost 250 feet from the road. So from just a congruity standpoint of entering the property, driving down that road, most homes are set back off the road. It's kind of more rural look versus what I think a lot of us are concerned with, homes being built up right against the road, when that wasn't part of the original plan when we all bought these lots and started building these homes. Just the lot availability of the space that's going to be if you try to build beyond that drainage ditch, in between the trees and the drainage ditch. So there's concerns about the home size going in there, potential, flooding of that home if the pond increases, like we talked about in the floodplain, then that drainage reserve that's been set up. Potential wildlife habitat if there's not a lot of trees out there. And so if the house is going into the trees, none of us have been approached with what any kind of building plans have been submitted or being planned. And on that point, I think all of us, when we were buying the property out there, if you look west of that drainage reserve on the lot 3, that's where we were all explained that any home built on that side of the property would be built back on the west side. So there wouldn't be any homes immediately, stuck up right against the road. So I think that's some of the concerns I have, and I'm sure there's some other people who can speak here to their concerns.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions of the speaker?
Mr. McCollum, can you state your address one more time?
Yes, my current home address is 14205 West Remington Lane. I'm the owner of lot 3 there at Yoder Air Park. So it's just north. In the picture there, it's just north of where that picture is.
Okay, thank you.
Where this proposed setback reduction is.
Mr. Foster, did you have a question for the speaker?
Yes, Mr. McCollum. Is there a covenant required setback for all the properties in your development?
I think my belief is that we're all abiding by the plat, where it's a minimum of 50 foot based off the plat. But I think the majority of all homes, I think the closest one is 180 feet back from the actual road itself.
Did you happen to note on the plat document that it does call for a 50-foot building setback?
Yes. Yeah, that's what we're, we got the letter. We've, a few of us were working last week. Apologize, couldn't make the first meeting. And so that's what we're why where they're going to put the building when there's if they're going to reduce that 50-foot setback, where exactly they're going to put the property, especially with some of the drainage issues we already have in that area, and how they're going to disrupt the ground and where they're actually going to put a building.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. McCollum, for your testimony. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission on this case? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the agent or applicant. Mr. Rose, you have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Oh, yes, Mr. Derricks?
Yes, yes.
Are you
Sorry
wanting
about
to
that for the
address the
delay.
commission on this?
Yes, I would.
Okay, state your name and address, please, for the record.
Okay, Brian Dirks and 517 North Elm Street.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, and I own lot 5, which is basically just across Bonanza Circle from the property being discussed. And I just want to echo what Kevin McCollum said. I think that was a great explanation. And just to reiterate that, you know, when we bought this land, and also now we're looking to build a house in the next month or two, and this kind of really changes things for us. But the fact that we were told that, you know, for view and everything else, that property wasn't going to be built on except for on the west side of the pond. And then now this is all coming up just now with little explanation. But, you know, we just had an appraisal done for this build process. And part of that is they take pictures and they take into account the view and everything else. This is going to drastically change that and alter the landscape of the property and also just the neighborhood itself. Like what Kevin said, I mean, when everything else is set back very far from the road, and then you go put something in like this, which doesn't abide by any of the rules that we all signed up for when we bought the property, it really just changes the way the neighborhood looks. So just want to keep that, you know, make sure that people know that and take that into account.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dirks. Is there anybody on the commission? Yes, Mr. Warren?
Mr. Dirks, you mentioned that you were told that they would only build on the other side of the drainage area. Do you remember who told you that?
Yeah, well, whenever we bought the land from Don Yoder.
Okay, thank you.
This is Jeremy Schrog. I'd like to make a statement.
Okay, were there any other questions for Mr. Derricks? Hearing none. Okay, yes, Mr. Schrog?
Yes, I live at 1830 South Bonanza Circle. There is a house there right across from the area noted in red. That is where I currently live. So that picture doesn't show that there's a residence there, but I live there. And like Brian and Kevin, when I purchased land, I did a lot of research into where I'd like to build. And, you know, I was told the same thing, that nobody could build there because of the floodplain. And if they wanted to build there, it would have to be on the west side of that pond that's depicted there. And then, so then after building, now we're told that, you know, we want to change the easement rules, and it, you know, the fear of devaluing our properties. And not just that, but as you can see, it is a fly-in community. And it's been my experience in the past that people who are not pilots and don't own aircraft for private use will tend to complain most of the time for that type of noise activity. And the runway is lit at night. So that just somebody who does not have runway access, and they will not have runway access. There's no easement rights for them to gain access to the runway if they're planning on putting something there. That's just another potential complaint area for the rest of us who actually participate in that activity regularly and professionally. So not just, you know, devaluing the property, but, you know, changing the rules after we all make a decision. Pretty healthy financial investment to have things change all of a sudden.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schrag. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to ask him a question? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this case?
Yeah, this is Zach Steffen. I live at 1610 South Bonanza Circle, which is Lot 1. I just wanted the record to state that I share the same comments and feelings of Brian, Kevin, and Jeremy and what David stated in terms of continuity of our properties and keeping up with the look of our neighborhood that we have here, and what we all agreed to when we decided to build and then purchase our lots out here.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have a question for him? Mr. Oh. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Steffen, for your testimony today. Anybody else that would like to address the commission on this case? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the Mr. Rose, the agent for the applicant. If you could, you have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Chris Rose with Baughman Company, agent for the applicant. Just to clarify a little bit, I think the original intent was to try to build on the west side of the lake, but to cross that stream that's there, the cost of it to build a structure was pretty high. It actually would have to match what was underneath Kellogg, so it was quite high. We had some experience with some past owners trying to do that. Ended up that there was just no way they're going to be able to afford to build a structure to cross that creek and to meet, fire and county regulations. So I believe they wanted to go on the west side, or sorry, on the east side, and we're vacating the setback back to the 30-foot, which is subdivision regulations, and just trying to recover some of that floodplain reserve or drainage reserve that is outside of the floodplain. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Rose? Yeah, Chris, I've got one. One of the speakers was commenting about floodplain or drainage issues. Can you address that generally? Are there drainage issues? Didn't see anything about floodplain. Do you have minimum pad on that, or? And you're muted.
Yeah, we didn't really actually do, our firm, Baughman Company did not do the recent plat. We did the stuff prior to that, the Yoder 4th edition. I'm looking at the plat that was done recently, and yeah, there is a minimum pad for lot 3. I don't know of any drainage issues out there, but I probably wouldn't know that.
Okay. I see that's just a drainage reserve more than, okay. But you don't know of any drainage issues?
I do not know of any.
Okay.
Not saying that there's not, but I don't know of any.
Okay. All right. Well, yes, Mr. Warren. Oh, Mr. Foster.
Mr. Rose, I just wanted to confirm on the diagram we're looking at, it does show a 50-foot setback, and where did you get that information?
I'm sorry, I'm confused. Mr. Foster, what do you mean? They originally platted 50 feet. We're asking to vacate 20 feet of that platted 50-foot building setback.
Okay, that I didn't catch there. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Hearing none, bring it back to the commission for action. Mr. Warren.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
It was approved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Dool to approve as presented. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
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 Okay. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Green?
Aye.
Bill Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. McKay?
Aye.
Don't believe Shane Gross is here.
Nope.
Fox?
Aye.
Dool?
Aye.
Blick?
Nay.
Nix?
Aye.
Foster?
Nay.
Warren?
Aye.
I don't believe Joe Johnson's here.
Correct.
Miles? Cindy Miles?
Unmute.
She's mute.
Oh,
There she is. Hold on.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Hartman?
Aye.
Florence?
Nay.
9-3.
I've got 9-3.
Yep.
Okay. Motion carries 9-3. Okay, next case is be Mr. Williams.
Yeah, good afternoon, Matt Williams, for planning staff. This case is conditional use 2020-36. If we can pull that up on the slide, there we go. The applicant is requesting a conditional use for an event center in the county on 3.88 acres at 4103 South 183rd Street West. The property is zoned rural residential, and it is located about 1.5 miles south of Goddard's urban area of influence. The owners plan to remove the existing home and garage that are on the property. They plan to construct a 100 by 80 foot barn that's going to serve as an event center, and then a 40 by 60 foot wedding chapel on the property. A large area to the north of these buildings is going to serve as a gravel parking lot. The applicant anticipates that it could be up to 300 people at an event, and he also anticipates that the events will close and have everybody out of there by 11 p.m. Site plan showing the location of these improvements can be found within the staff report, and I will pull that up here in just a second. Platting will be necessary in order for building permits to be issued for these new structures. The Unified Zoning Code does contain certain performance standards for an event center in the county, and you can see those there in your staff report. The area surrounding this is zoned all rural residential. There are some homes to the northeast and a few further south along 183rd Street West. Otherwise, most of the land around it is agricultural. Staff is recommending that the conditional use for the event center in the county be approved, subject to the conditions in the staff report. I will note that the DAB met a week ago Monday, and they did approve the staff report and the conditional use, recommend approval, but they changed the fourth condition. The fourth condition in our staff report says that the event shall be limited in size to 300 people at one event. They recommended that it be limited to 300 people total, just in case there may be two events going on at the same time. And then if we go through our slides here, next slide. Next slide. This is the site plan. You can see the large event center in blue towards the bottom with the chapel that's probably northwest of that, and then the gravel parking lot to the north of that. Next slide. And these are some photos of the area. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And this is the site as currently is. As I said, the applicant is proposing to remove those structures. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Matthew?
I have a question.
Yes.
So Matthew, what is do you have any idea how many feet the closest residence is to this property?
If I'm remembering correctly, if you could go back a few slides to the aerial. There we go. The closest residence is located northeast. You can see it on there just southeast of the intersection. Let's see, I'm bad with giving kind of ideas of how far that would be.
I can look it up, Matt.
Okay, Scott is measuring real quick for us to give us an idea of how far away that is.
Okay, just 1 second. It's gonna take me just a little bit. Hang in there.
Yeah, we can get you that answer in just a minute.
Let's see.
So
here's my concern. Here's my concern with these these cases where we do the conditional use permit on an event center that's on less than 20 acres out in the county. There's no sound restrictions out in the county. So they can go out there and they can have these 300-person events and they can have the sound up as loud as they want. And I know that we approved a few years ago an event center on less than 5 acres out south of Hayesville that unfortunately the neighbor listens every weekend till 11 o'clock or midnight to music that is just blaring to the point where him and his wife can't sleep. They can't enjoy a home they've been in for 20 years. And so unless we have some kind of restrictions on how loud or 11 o'clock at night, if I have kids and I'm living close to an event center and I put them to bed at 9 o'clock, shutting down music at 11 o'clock at night, doesn't suffice. And the other thing is homeowners that are around in that area, they don't have any, like once it's been approved by us, they can't come back and say, I want you to hear how loud this music is next to my house and how it's intervening with me being able to enjoy my property. And so those are my concerns. It wouldn't be the same in the city, but out in the county, there's no limitations on the sound unless we put them on there.
And I do have the information on the measurement. It's just about 400 feet.
Ms. Miles, it's about 400 feet from that property to the closest house.
All right, thank you.
I did want to point out, I did get one call from a neighbor and their concern was parking and the number of people that might be in the area. Just wanted to point that out because I had missed that.
Thank you.
Mr. Hartman and then Mr. Foster.
In the city, for one of these, is there a noise decibel maximum you can have?
I need to defer to JR on that question if he knows the answer to that.
J.R. Cox, Metropolitan Planning, for the record again. There would be, it'd be subject to the city's ordinance on noise. Please don't ask me what that number is. But yes, there would be in the corporate limits of Wichita.
Okay.
Here comes the attorney.
Yeah, that's right. We do have legal staff here.
Yeah, we got legal coming, making his way down. Still haven't been able to get a chair that's comfortable in here, can you?
Back problems consist.
Yeah.
The noise ordinance in the city, for what it's worth, is you have to be like 25 feet from the property line of the property in question, and it has to be more than 20 decibels over the ambient noise of the area. We used to have somebody on staff that at least acknowledged that they knew how to do that. I don't know, because trying to find what is the ambient noise, and is that being caused more than that? If you go to like OSHA standards, you know, mere traffic on a street exceeds 20 decibels over that level. A car wash going off has exceeded it. So it's very, very difficult to do. Typically, when these things happen, nobody is employed in the city of Wichita except the police department at that time of night to do something. So it is a very difficult thing to enforce, and trying to do it otherwise, other through police, is problematic. I don't know, I can't speak to this particular case because it is a county case, but any of these violations constitutes something that someone could receive a citation for. So I don't know, unless Justin's online or something, whether you guys could impose some kind of a noise requirement unless the county had some corresponding misdemeanor or citation charge. Okay, because you would be creating something that would not be enforceable otherwise. And so, again, I can't really speak to that, but I would be cautious about trying to establish some kind of a level, because, you know.
And this is Justin Wagner, Assistant County Counselor. I may piggyback a little bit on what Jeff was saying there, and some of the comments that Commissioner Miles made. The county does not have a noise resolution in place, so that's accurate. I think something that has been utilized before, and it's certainly at the will of the Planning Commission, I don't believe it's part of the recommended conditions in this matter, but on similar event venues, has been that music or DJs or bands would be restricted to being indoors only, or being indoors only past a certain hour of day, so as to keep the noise level down to a more reasonable level. That's not saying that should be a condition that you would add. That was something that's been done before in these types of applications.
Thank you. I think that's helpful. Mr. Foster, did you have a comment or question?
I'll wait on my question just now. I'll wait.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Matthew? Hearing none, we'll go to the agent or applicant, and you have 10 minutes.
Hi, this is Justin Five. I am the applicant for this property. I think Matt did a great job of explaining our intent for the building, for the property. We've had the property about 3 years, and so we're kind of in the early stages of heading down this path, and this is the first obstacle that we need to pass. And so I think our intention is never to go against any of the ordinances in place, to follow all of the building permits. I know we did have a letter submitted by one of the neighbors, and I do not want to not follow any building permits, any ordinances, any sound levels. The property, the music and everything will be inside the barn. So I want that to be clear that that's what the barn is for, to have the reception in there. We also had all the setbacks. All of our property will be as far away from the residences as possible. That's why it's on the south side of the property. So we try to further that distance. Like I said, I'm open and up for questions or any other concerns, but our intention is not to change anything that's in the area. That there's a house there that is an eyesore. Our proposal is to take care of that as well and make the property look a little bit better in general, and have a building that kind of matches inside the area. It's going to be a metal building, but it's going to be a nice building. It's not going to look real industrial. And please note that there are other businesses in the area. One in particular is a trucking company that's right on the corner. They also have loud engines early in the morning. So my intention is not to make anything worse in that area as far as the noise level.
Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Fry, the applicant? Yes,
Mr. Fry,
Mr. Warren?
sorry.
Yeah, Ms. Fry, the advisory board had changed one of the recommended conditions from 300 at a event to 300 for all events. Are you in line with that number and that situation?
I am, yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Miles?
Mr. Fry, would you be okay with having a condition that allowed no outside music after, say, 9:30 or 10 p.m.?
It's Mr. Fife, and I don't believe so right off. I might want to confirm with, because I don't think it's going to be a problem anyway. That might be something I'd be willing to explore it. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hmm?
Yes, Mr. Nix.
Is the first property that's north and east, is that a trucking company or is that a residence?
Residents.
Resident.
The one just north of that has a trucking property on it.
I thought the applicant just said it was a trucking company.
One north of that house.
North of the house.
One on
is a
the
trucking
corner,
company.
north of
That
the
one,
house.
yes, that one.
Oh, north of the house, okay. All right.
Mr. Johnson?
I live in this area. There's actually a trucking operation that's on the northeast corner of MacArthur and 183rd. There's a residence on the southeast corner that keeps his trucks there also. The house directly south, which would be close to this application, is an old farmhouse that's been there forever, and this application space was an old farmhouse with a barn, and years ago there was a bad situation happened when somebody got murdered, and once that took place 25 years ago, this place had just kind of went downhill.
When I drove by the other day, there were half a dozen semis out there. That's the reason I thought it was a trucking company.
That's on the southeast corner.
Yeah,
They've been there for some time.
yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Hearing none. Hang on, Mr. Fry, you'll have an opportunity to speak again, possibly, if need be. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to address this case?
Yeah, no comment from Century 2 on this case.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to speak to the commission on this case? Hearing none. We'll come back. Mr. Fry, you've already agreed to the comment that was brought up by the CAB to have no more than 300 people for total for if you have more than one event out there on the property. And you've also agreed to a possibility of having a DJ or band requirement being indoors. That hasn't been in the motion yet, but you don't have any issues with that, is that correct?
The 300 people, no objections. The noise.
Yeah.
I guess I'm open to the idea. It's not something that I really planned on having a stipulation. And then honestly, the 11 o'clock time is not the time we would end music. It was like 10 o'clock, they would be done with their event, and then they would have an hour to clean up and be off the property. So it's not like parties are going to 11 anyway, the receptions. So to change it to 9:30, they have to have music off. I mean, that's a 30-minute of when they were going to have it off anyway. So I guess I'm open to that. But if it's not necessary to put it on the clause, I don't think that it needs to be added, if that makes sense.
Just wanted to restrain it inside the barn, don't you?
Yeah.
I don't think he understood the question.
Yes, Mr. Foster?
I'm going to introduce into the discussion, having recent experience with this, the chapel is most likely going to have music as well. And typically, at least my experience, is some of those chapels they're connected to the outdoors. So I think we have to be very carefully word any restriction on indoors versus outdoors and how the music works.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Hang on, you'll find out what the motion is going to involve and what actions will need to be taken. So we'll bring the discussion back to the commission, looking for any comments or motions, actions that we want to take on this. Mr. Warren.
I'm going to move as presented with the exception of limiting the number of people, total of 300, to any date, on any given date, and that outside music amplifiers be eliminated by 11 p.m.
I'll second that.
Yes.
Sure, just a question
Mr.
for
Waddle?
clarification here. So the limit would be 300 people per day, or is it 300
event.
people maximum at one time?
Same thing with down.
Trying to come up with what had been agreed to as part of the staff report, that it would be an event.
Okay, so in the staff report, it's 300 per event, and the CAB recommendation was 300 as the limit at any one time.
Yeah, that the intent was to meet that.
Okay, so 300 is the limit at any one time.
Yeah.
Right.
300 max for any given date.
Well,
Yeah.
the nuance there is just that there could be the possibility of multiple events over one day. So you could have 900 people there if there was, three events. Exactly.
Gotcha.
So sorry, that was a nuance. But I understand it is 300 as the limit at any one time.
At any one time, yes.
Okay, good enough. And, okay, so you made the motion, and I believe Mr. Hartman was the second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Mr. Foster?
So this will allow for outdoor music.
Yes, up until 11 p.m.
11. And I'd be curious, Ms. Miles, do you have some discussion on that based upon your earlier comments?
If you're speaking, Ms. Miles, you need to unmute.
I'd like to make a substitute motion that includes the maximum of 300 people that Mr. Warren recommended, but also cuts off any outside music at 10 p.m.
So the substitute motion is to agree to the 300 cap, but then no music piped outdoors after 10 p.m. Do we have a second?
That's correct.
Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Mr.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Mr. Foster and Mr. Florence seconded that motion. So any discussion on the substitute motion? We'll take a roll call on this, please. So all those in favor of the substitute motion, we'll take a roll call.
Okay. So this is on the substitute motion. Green?
Aye.
Johnson?
No.
McKay?
No.
Gross is not here. Fox?
No.
Dool?
Aye.
Blick?
Nay.
Nix?
Aye.
Foster. Warren.
Nay.
Miles.
Aye.
Hartman.
Nay?
Florence.
Aye.
Oh, well, interesting. I have 6-6.
6-6.
It fails.
So the substitute motion fails. We'll go back to the original motion. We'll do that. Yes, Mr. Foster?
Just for discussion point, my substitute of the substitute motion would have been to allow no outdoor music at all. But I will withhold that motion.
Okay, because I was just gonna, I was looking back to Mr. Van Zant to see if we can have a substitute in the middle of the vote. So we'll go to the original motion by Mr. Warren. We'll also do this one, roll call, please.
Okay. Green.
Aye.
Bill Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. McKay.
Aye.
Gross is not here. Fox.
Aye.
Dool.
Aye.
Blick.
Aye.
Nix.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Warren.
Aye.
Joe Johnson's not here. Miles.
Nay.
Hartman.
Aye.
And Florence.
Was it aye?
So it carries 11-1. Motion carries 11-1. Okay, thank you. Well, that was interesting. Okay, moving on. We'll take, looks like zone change number 00044. Boy, it's the Matt Williams show today.
Yep. Okay, this is zone 2020-44. The applicant is requesting the rezoning of this 1.25 acre property located on the west side of South 111th Street West from rural residential to SF20 single family. The applicant is requesting this in order to allow the creation of a lot less than 2 acres in size. The property is just west of Garden Plains urban area of influence. And although we're not required to take this to their planning commission, we did reach out to them and they were in support of this rezoning. A plat was approved for this property on December 3rd, and that is pending this zone change. The surrounding properties to the north, south, and west are developed with residential homes, all on property that is zoned rural residential. And the property to the east is zoned rural residential, but is used agriculturally. The comprehensive plan identifies the site as rural on the future growth concept map. This category encompasses land outside the urban growth area for Wichita and the small cities, but it anticipates there being large lot residential subdivisions. This request, therefore, is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Staff recommends approval of this request as submitted. In your packet, you will see several comments that we've received from residents nearby. Many mention that there is a manufactured house that has been placed on the property right now. It's just sitting on the property. And I just wanted to make note that zoning would allow this manufactured house to be on the property as long as it's been placed on a permanent foundation. It hasn't yet, but if it were to be in the future, that would be allowed. This was heard at the CAB a week ago on Monday and was approved. And I can go through some photos here. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So this is east of the site. Next slide. Residents to the south. Next. This is the property, and there's the manufactured home that I spoke of. Next slide. And that's to the north, so we can go back one slide to the property. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Foster?
What's the size of the adjacent properties?
The size of them, they are rural residential. I know they don't meet that size requirement. I believe that means that they were platted before that zoning went in place. I don't have the exact dimensions, but if that's what you were getting at.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none. If we could have the agent or applicant state your name and address for the record, and you have 10 minutes.
Raymond Britton, Alpha Land Survey, 102 East 4th Avenue, Hutchinson, Kansas, 67501. I just stand here to answer any questions if anybody has any. I concur with the zoning comments.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the agent? Hearing none, we'll open it up to public comment. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to speak to the commission on this case?
Yeah, there's no comment on this case at Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? You would have?
Yes.
Yes, you have 3 minutes, and if you could give us your name and address for the record, please.
This is Bonnie Copper. I am planning and zoning for the city of Garden Plain. We did approve it as long as it is manufactured design according to Sedgwick County regulations, and it is on a permanent foundation.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, thank you for that update, Ms. Kaufman. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to speak to the commission on this case?
Yes, this is Darla and Leo Larkin, and we are at 1754 Eileen, which is on a cul-de-sac just west of 311. And we have turned into not wanting this rezoned. We had sent in a picture of our home, which was not shown. And it's about 1,850 square feet. And majority of the homes in this area are roughly around that size and have been established for a while. And we just feel that this does not meet the area, I don't know really how to say it, but it just doesn't fit with the other types of homes that are in this area. So we have submitted information to not wanting this approved.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony today, Ms. Larkin. Is there anybody else virtually that would like to address this case?
Yes, this is Kyle Pinkley. I live south of there, 2 houses down. My address is 1751 South 311th Street. I would like to see this not rezoned. I feel like a manufactured home in that area, it doesn't fit. And I feel like if it does get rezoned and there is a manufactured home put in place, I feel like it will decrease the value of my home if that happens.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to have any questions? Do we have any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony today. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the agent, Mr. Britton, for rebuttal. You have 2 minutes.
Well, as far as my clients going, she will do a foundation on it. It's not gonna have a basement. There'll be driveway put in. Future is to put in a garage for storage vehicles, stuff like that. So she is trying to improve the property to where it's a livable lot rather than just a vacant lot that just sits empty and no tax based on nothing brought in. So she is trying to improve property to help out the neighborhood. So again, I stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Mr. Foster?
How will water and sewer be provided?
It's my understanding that she's has contractors in line to do the foundation, place the modular unit, to do septic and water, and it'll all be done per Sedgwick County specifications.
So we're talking about a well, correct?
I would assume. I think it's all rural water out there, or well water. Sorry.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for action. Yes, Mr. Foster?
I've got a couple of staff questions.
Thanks.
Are the surrounding properties in non-compliance related to water and sewer? Because, I mean, they're not the 2 acres.
I would say for the size of lot having a home on it, we would probably consider that a zoning nonconformance.
Right, legal non-conforming.
Legal nonconforming, yeah.
And then the second question is, what type of driveway would be required, the minimum that the applicant would have to install? Is it paved and 2 off-street, or what's going to be required?
Yeah, JR, if you could help me out with that question.
Mr. Cox, if you could step to the podium, please.
J.R. Cox, Metropolitan Planning, again. I believe the answer to your question would be 1 required parking space, and I believe as long as it meets the definition of an all-weather surface in the zoning code, it's acceptable. However, I know that Sedgwick County Fire Department has standards, and I'm not sure what those standards are relative to what our code would require, which would be minimum 1/2-inch diameter gravel, 4-inch thick. That's what our zoning code would require.
Get your question answered, because I was going to see if Wagner was around to add to it if need be. Okay, thank you.
This is Justin Wagner. Do you want me to make a comment?
If you don't mind.
And I'm looking up, but I wish I was a little more familiar off the top of my head with the Sedgwick County Service Drive Code. I don't believe it will. I can give an answer to that in just a minute. I'm actually looking it up, but I don't think that driveway will be long enough that it would apply. But I'll chime in a minute if that's okay, Chairman.
Okay. We can wait for you. Yes, Mr. McKay?
There was a question a while ago about whether they have wells or rural water district. We might ask one of the people that talked how they have, whether they have rural water or because that makes a difference, and whether they have wells.
Yeah, in my research for this, it's not within a rural water district, so I believe it would need to be on well.
It will be a well? Any luck, Mr. Wagner?
I apologize, I haven't found that just yet in terms of how long the distance has to be, but I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head what that distance is, but I don't.
Chair, I happened to listen to the fire chief make a presentation to WABA yesterday about this issue.
Yes.
200 feet to the back side of the structure, 200 feet from a
Paved
road.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it
Yeah,
has
and
to
I'm
be
actually
20 feet
finding that
wide.
now too.
Okay, all right. Yes, Mr. Foster. Thank you, Mr. Wagner.
I think as long as the motion, I was looking in the staff report for specific conditions and things. I think we just need to clarify that it'll meet all those requirements.
Okay. Good enough. Any other comments? Do we have a motion? Yes, Mr. Foster.
I'd go ahead and make a motion for approval with the conditions that we meet any fire code requirements as well as the environmental requirements related to water and sewer.
Okay. Do I have a second for that?
Question.
Mr. Hartman?
Does the staff report include the permanent foundation?
Yes.
Yeah?
The staff report doesn't include that, that's a requirement in the zoning code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion, and was that just a question, or were you seconding the motion, Mr. Hartman?
I will second the motion.
Okay, that's right, good. So it's moved and seconded. All those any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 10-1. Mr. Johnson left. Okay, we'll have next case, please.
Kathy Morgan for the Planning Department. This is the Zone 45. Paul. Keep going. There we go. Thank you. This is an application to rezone single-family residential to MF18 multifamily. It is south, it's on West Maple Street, south of the church, out there just west of the big ditch. It's north of the big box stores, that front Kellogg. And so hopefully maybe the applicant can answer some of these questions that I didn't have at the time of writing the staff report. This area does have water and sewer provided for it. It is on gravel roads. And this fits in with the conformance to plans and policies that the uses in this area is small scale multifamily developments. With MF18, that requires, or there are allowed 18 units, dwelling units per acre. This parcel or these two lots happen to be 3/4 of an acre. The applicant would have to provide on-site parking, would have to provide enclosed trash dumpster areas, and it would have to be concrete hard surface parking. So it could be, this property could be redeveloped or developed with single-family residential, but this has been vacant. In looking at the historic aerials of this area, this property has been vacant since 1970, thereabout, maybe even earlier. The traffic, there have been some concerns about traffic but there's a lot of traffic that goes through on Julia Street there to get to, what is that street just, is it Taft? Taft. Staff didn't see any concerns about additional traffic with having to require, with requiring the on-site parking and the trash enclosures. You're probably looking at maybe 11 or 12 at most dwelling units on that site. Oh, I did have that, 1938 is how long this property has been undeveloped. The places for people, this does meet the recommendations of the Places for People plan. And like I said, it meets with the variety of residential housing. So staff is recommending that the zoning request be approved, and I will answer any questions.
Do we have any questions?
I did want to point out,
Yes.
you have several emails, copies of emails, and a letter that staff received that mentioned that they did not want they were opposed to the rezoning request. And I think there's at least one of the persons who sent in an email is on the phone or on virtually with us.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, if we could have the agent or applicant, please.
Certainly. Russ Avey, Bossman Company agent for the applicant. This was also approved on December 7th by District Advisory Board number 4 unanimously, and there was no one at that meeting opposing the application. There were some questions that carried over on a previous zoning case on their agenda. And so there were several questions related to site development, or if we had an idea of exactly what we intended to build, which we do not at this time. There were just a few DAB board members that had a few questions in regards to that. It was pointed out that not too long ago, Starkey came in and zoned property to the southeast across the street to the limited commercial in anticipation for a multifamily development as well. Property directly across the street east must be a second or third phase for that development. So currently it's undeveloped with existing single family houses to the south and to the west. It was pointed out at the District Advisory Board meeting that the home to the north is owned by the applicant as well. And with that, I'll set for any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Avey? Yes, Mr. Foster.
Mr. Avey, do you happen to know any requirements for paving of the street when that might kick in, or is this, it would only be upon request of the applicant?
It would be upon request by the applicant. We would have to put together a benefit district on both sides of that road and have 51% or more of those property owners signing up for the petition. Otherwise, I think the city council could petition it in. There is no intention at this time to do so.
Thank you.
Yeah, Russ, Brummett, I know, is unpaved. I think Julia and Maple is signalized. Is University stops at Brummett and then it picks up again at Julia, or does University go all the way through?
It's a little awkward, but you pretty much hit the nail on the head. So between Brummett and Julia, I do not believe it's improved at all. I think in anticipation for that project to the southeast to continue northward in subsequent phases. University east of Julia, if you recall, within the last year and a half, probably, we came in and zoned that southeast corner of Julia and Maple to kind of a heavy industrial contractor's yard. It was my recollection from that project that University is kind of indistinguishable between a unpaved city street and a driveway. And then University to the west is a paved city street.
Yeah, the aerial map that we have and also the, looks like the zoning map, it doesn't really show University being paved, but I just, you know, it's kind of murky down there to say the least with
Certainly.
University per se, so. Any other questions for Mr. Avey before we move on? Hearing none, is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to address the commission on this case?
There's no comment from Century 2 on this case.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to address this, address the commission on this case? And if so, you have, if you'd please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
I would like to address the council.
Yes, Mr. Newth.
Hello? Yes, Mr. Knuth. University to the west is not paved, by the way. And the only reason no one was at that meeting that was set on the 10th, I think you said, was because none of us knew about it. I'm not sure how that notice was given out, but once we found out, and everyone knows about that now, there's a lot of opposition to this being built. I know that the city has set precedents at least twice for multi-dwelling residences. I've been part of those, and we want to preserve our neighborhood, and putting in apartments here is not part of that. Added crime, added traffic, lower home values, none of that has to do with anyone around this area. The only person that gains from this is the person doing that, the building on this lot. And the reason that lot's been empty for this long is because that's the way the owner previous to him wanted it. It could be built with a house on it any time, but he always enjoyed having that big backyard. So yeah, he never found a reason to build on it. He liked it. My kids, they ride bikes here, they walk in this neighborhood. We have tried for 32 years to keep this neighborhood single family and safe, and all the way from here to Ridge Road, if you look at the map, it's single family, and we are totally opposed to any multi-family going into this. So I think that's all.
Thank you. Do you have any?
Mr. Knuth, could you, Knuth, would you state your address, please?
I'm at 437 South Arapahoe.
Okay, thank you.
That's the street next to Brummett.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, if you give us your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Keith Schumann, and I live at 326 South Arapahoe. My property adjoins it. I'm on the west side, and I oppose it. We have enough traffic coming through here with the businesses to the south, and that would just increase traffic. And Brummett Street is unpaved. There are people that live on Brummett Street right now to the south that cut over to Arapahoe so they don't have to drive down the dirt road. We didn't know about the meeting either that was talked about earlier. It's just, yeah, it's not a fit for our neighborhood. We're quiet, private community that enjoys each other's company, but privacy also. And we do have a rental house in the property or in the neighborhood that gives us an idea of what this kind of dwelling would bring. And it's not savory. And that's what I have to say about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schuman. Are there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony today. Is there anyone else that would like to address this case?
She's on mute.
Hi, my name is April Schuman. Oh, take that one off. Sorry, I had my phone going. I run a daycare, and so I was had both phones in my hand. My name is April Schuman. I'm at 308 South Arapahoe.
All right, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my comment back to the gentleman that was talking about it, the Starkey houses before. The Starkey houses do not create that much traffic through here. It's all self-contained. Apartments would bring on more issues as far as the drugs, the cop presence, and the lower income families that we are trying to keep out of our neighborhood. And that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Schuman, is there anybody who would like to does anybody have any questions for her? Yes, Ms. Fox.
Questions for any of the residents that spoke. I thought I saw comments about the maintenance of the vacant properties that are surrounding the area. Have there been concerns with the maintenance of the properties up to this time? The lots that are vacant where the proposed dwellings would go?
I would comment that the lots that are vacant, I mean, it's what gives us a rural feeling. When we moved into this is Richard Knuth at 437 South Arapahoe. When we moved here, it was all dirt roads. It was well water, and as you look at this, these are all lot and a half, almost a half acre lots. This is why we moved here, is for the open feeling and for the vacant lots. These vacant lots are not abandoned. They're mowed, they're kept up. So no, I love the vacant lots. If a house went there, that would be fine. I don't mind that. I just want to keep this neighborhood single family, and it's kind of a quaint neighborhood through here. Even though we're surrounded by businesses on all sides, we've kept this neighborhood intact, and that's why we continue to live here. And so that would be my comment to that.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak to this case virtually?
We can't hear you, Tori.
Here, there are no other speakers. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, it looks like Tori Horton is trying to communicate, but unfortunately, it doesn't appear that her microphone is working. She's unmuted, and I can see her talking, but we're not able to hear anything.
Okay, I don't.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Now we can.
Yes.
Okay.
If you could state your name.
Horton. I am adjacent to the property in question.
Your address, please.
308 South Arapahoe.
Thank you.
I'm to the west of the property that is going up for development, which is like directly over the fence from me.
Okay.
And I oppose it as well. Again, I've been here since 2006. It's a very quiet, family-oriented neighborhood. I also run a child care from my home, and I'm very concerned with adding multiple units, the change in the area that it would bring about, as well as noise levels, trash, different things like that, as well as traffic. So I just want to go on record as being opposed to this.
Okay, thank you.
Could we have her name again?
And could we have your name again, please?
Turi Horton, Horton.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none. Thank you for your testimony today. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission on this case? Okay, thank you. We'll bring it back to the agent.
Thank you, Russ Avey, Boston Company agent for the applicant again. You know, I can certainly appreciate change within a neighborhood that's been this well established for this many decades, as well as a lot of the concerns, or I should say preconceived notions of what this type of change would bring to a neighborhood. In regards to traffic, I'm not certain that it's all that reasonable to expect that these lots which front on Brummett Street within 250 feet of a paved arterial roadway would choose to circumnavigate the entire block and come out to the north on Arapahoe. So from that standpoint, I'm not certain that this particular land use will create that type of traffic generation that the neighbors may expect. Noise, again, this is a residential use. If one was to expect noise from a residential use, I think that it should be considered incidental to any other type of noise that can come off of a residential property. So we're really talking about the density of people. So from that standpoint, again, we're talking about two 1,600 square foot lots that's not going to yield a lot of dwelling units to begin with. So from that standpoint, I think it's reasonable to expect that the intensity of the development that could potentially occur on this, once you factor in screening and landscaping, as well as off-street parking for multifamily use, you're not going to see a high yield of dwelling units. So from that standpoint, I don't think that we're going to be envisioning any type of multi-story apartment complex, apartment building, and if necessary, we can certainly restrict the height to 2 stories, which would be a standard restriction of any single-family residential district. Or I should say not a restriction of a single-family district, but an expectation that most homes are built 1 or 2 stories in single-family residential zoning districts. So from that standpoint, I think I would not necessarily concur with a lot of the sentiment stated by the area residents, although I can certainly appreciate and certainly have heard those concerns in previous zoning cases over the years. And with that, I will answer any questions that the commissioners may have.
Yes, Mr. Warren has a question for you.
Russ, just based on the request for MF 18 and the 3/4 of an acre, have you calculated how many units you can put in on that property?
That's not always a strong point here, but let me do the math really quick, Tom. So quite frankly, it would yield 13.5 dwelling units, which of course isn't something that we are necessarily seeking. The reason for the MF18, just to maybe build upon your initial statement about the zoning category at hand here, is both the TF3 zoning district with the conditional use only limits up to, I believe, maybe triplexes through a separate conditional use process. So we wanted the ability, or I should say the flexibility in the type of units built, less concerned with the number of units actually constructed. So if there was a dwelling unit cap that the commission felt necessary to preserve the character of the neighborhood, we can certainly discuss that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Foster has a question.
Possible for me to ask a question?
I'm sorry, Mr. Knuth. This time is limited to the commissioners and the agent.
That's fine.
So you've had your, thank you for your testimony, though. Yes, Mr. Foster?
Mr. Avey, I just wanted to confirm on the screening and landscaping, that would be required in the northwest and the south, correct?
That is correct. I'm not certain what the street tree requirements would be with the landscape ordinance for Brummett, because the property across the street, directly across the street, would be single family as well. We only get into the limited commercial to the southeast. But yeah, multifamily, as opposed to the SF5 and TF3 zoning districts, does carry screening requirements.
Thank you.
Keep going.
Yes. Any other questions?
Could we please go through the slide showing the surrounding areas?
Sure.
Okay, this is the vacant property looking west. Go ahead. Northwest, there's the house to the north, and then you see the fences and tree lines of those structures facing Arapahoe. This is looking south, to the southwest at the corner of the property. And this is looking south toward those units that are developed down there on University. Go ahead. This is the property directly across the street, across Brummett on the east side. It has some mature trees there. Go to the next one. They have multiple buildings on there, but there's a large, as you can see, it looks like maybe it's a garden of some kind that they have every year. Next one. And this is looking directly east.
Okay. I have a question for staff. There was some comment about the height of the structures that could be built on this site. For MF18, what would be that height?
45 feet.
45 feet, okay. And I know the agent has already mentioned the fact that they have no intention of building anything over a two-story, and in fact would welcome a two-story maximum height on that. So Mr. Van Zant has comment.
I'm sorry for the code. I'm sitting under an air conditioning vent and I'm like 1 degree body core temperature from hypothermia, so I do apologize. I wanted to stress that if there is a zoning case and there is a condition imposed on a zoning case that is other than compliance with an existing requirement like landscaping or something like that, that needs to be done through a PO as opposed to a condition to the actual zoning case. So if you're considering that or anything else in the upcoming motion, please request that to be through a PO so we can get it clarified. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Any other discussion, comments? Mr. Foster.
Can you describe further the Starkey development? That is it due southeast of this location?
Yeah.
I can't, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Russ.
Well, it certainly wasn't a case that we were involved with there specifically, and I know really very little about the details of it other than what I gleaned from the District Advisory Board discussion on the matter. And apparently that did bring out quite a bit of, or some level of neighborhood opposition to it as well. It appears to be developed with single-story unit quadplexes, if my memory serves correctly. And Kathy, you've probably been out there more recently than I have. I believe it appeared, at least from the street, to be kind of a quadplex type of development. Single story, obviously a residential design. It had pitched roofs, things of that nature.
And as I recall, it had masonry walls, at least along Julia Street. I don't know, I don't recall that there were on the backside of Brummett.
My son
Ms.
lives
Fox?
there. My son lives there, and it's a full perimeter concrete barrier on the north, the south, and the west, with a drive that opens onto, actually on the east also with a drive that opens onto Julia. And it's 4 duplexes.
They're duplexes, four
Four
duplexes.
duplexes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
And actually, there are generally 2 multi-passenger buses and about 4 staff cars per duplex, that come and go from that area, but that traffic goes on Julia only.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Foster,
Another point of discussion. This one I'm kind of struggling with. Around the United States now, one of the topics, excuse me, of discussion is exclusionary planning, exclusionary zoning. And some large cities are actually doing away with single-family zoning. And so this kind of relates to that discussion, so I just throw that out there. That intermixing of these various uses is frankly a trend. So, just point of discussion.
thank you. Mr. Warren,
I'll use that as a segue. My voicing of concern about discrimination against multifamily housing has been known for a long period of time, and so I do not see the concern with changing over from single family to multifamily in and of itself being the problem. In this case, I'm a little bit concerned about going from single family to 13 units in a fairly small area. So I'm looking for something in between, something that would allow maybe as a maximum of 8 units, maximum height of 35 foot, something that would not be
35-foot height.
quite as serious as what they're looking at, but that's, again, that's for discussion purpose. I'm not ready to make a motion at this point, but that's the direction I'm looking at. And doing that by virtue of a protective overlay.
okay, so can you clarify it again, your motion?
It's not a motion, that's a point of discussion.
For discussion purposes, okay. Is there any discussion on what Mr. Warren has to say there?
I think Russ was gonna say something.
I'm sorry?
Russ?
Yes, Mr. Avey?
I can certainly address those comments once if the planning commission is at a point in their discussion to hear back from me.
Sure.
So yeah, as far as a protective overlay goes, that would restrict elements of MF18 zoning district. We would be certainly willing to entertain that. Ironically, I have wrote down 8 dwelling units on my note here. So Mr. Warren's comments, I think, would be something that we could agree with.
Okay, well.
I'll put that into the form of a motion.
Is that a motion now?
Yeah, I'll move that we approve the zone change with protective overlay, restricting the number of units to 8, and I'm needing some help on a reasonable height factor. If staff can give me an idea.
35 feet, I think.
24 feet.
35 feet is what we have in TF3.
35, okay.
35, okay.
Restriction of 35 foot and a maximum of 8 units.
And I
as a
would second
protective
that.
overlay.
I would second that motion. So motion is made by Mr. Warren, seconded by Mr. Green. Any discussion on the motion with the protective overlay? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Good. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. One thing that I didn't manage to cover on the agenda, but we will hear, is the Community Investment Plan by Mr. Banks. Give us an update, please.
Good afternoon, Commission. Stephen Banks, Advanced Plan Senior Planner. We're presenting you the Community Investments Plan Monitoring Report, which we've spent quite a bit of time updating and creating a more formalized document from this. At the beginning of the document, we've created a summary of key findings of the current data. Among those, Sedgwick County lags behind the population growth targets in the Community Investments Plan by nearly 6%, and Wichita by about 5%. Hopefully, the 2020 census will provide some clarity on what has actually happened and give us some directions for future comprehensive plan changes. Housing. The central established area has actually been growing closer to the growth targets with downtown leading the way. But 2019 did see a slowdown in the number of units due to the number of multifamily units built in 2017 and 2018, and the market is simply trying to catch up and absorb that excess that was created then. Under economic factors, residential construction, the prospects for 2020 are looking pretty good. Commercial construction was very positive for both Wichita and Sedgwick County, but down for the established central area. Under quality of life, we're focusing on the National Citizen Survey results in this section, which applies to Wichita. These are sort of subjective because they're based upon the opinions received back from that survey. 16 National Citizen Survey indicators tracked in this report for 2020 were down compared to 2018, with 7 indicators showing improvement from 2018. Under infrastructure, the Wichita CIP showed continued improvement in meeting the priorities of the and goals of the Community Investments Plan, and we'll see that in the charts that we'll go over shortly. We added a table of contents, and then we also added this plan context and perspective section. We wanted to explain why this report was created and give the goals of the Community Investments Plan, which this report hopes to measure the progress of. And then there's an explanation of the 2 maps that are contained in the report, which we've moved to the appendix, and an explanation of the data sources and their timeframes, because as you start going into these reports, or especially in the matrices, you see things, we have some stuff for 2018, some stuff for 2019, some stuff for 2020. So we're trying to explain why that is here. The data sources just don't, come together at the same time. And then we also provide a link to the comprehensive plan online for people to look at. The next slide, let's see, this is showing part of page 6, the top portion. The middle column on page 6 used to be, those 3 graphs used to be one graph in the report previously, and we've separated out Wichita, Sedgwick County, and the established central area, and what is actually happening in those areas in relation to their specific targets. So hopefully it's easier to follow. We did the same thing for the right column having to do with net housing units. And the next slide shows the numbers for the established central area, and you can compare the population growth and housing units better side by side, because those things, population increases, you expect housing to increase, but one thing that we were saying in the community investments plan with the projections is that housing units will increase faster than population because households are getting smaller. There aren't as many households with children these days. There are more singles, whether they're seniors or young adults, choosing to live maybe go down to smaller type living options than the 3 and 4 bedroom homes that have been very commonly built in single family. And so this will give us some better side-by-side comparison of those things. The next slide, going on to page 8, we did combine we used to have multi-tiered 3-dimensional columns, and sometimes people were confused, were those individual or were those cumulative? They were cumulative numbers on those, so we revised the charts to be able to communicate that more effectively. In terms of, there was one correction. For those of you who are on advanced plans who received this report before, there is a correction to the 2015 numbers. Previously, that column was pulling from another area. I'm not sure how the formula got mixed up, but this is corrected here. Then in terms of the high-tech employment, we saw some really good gains in 2018 and 2019. 23% of the total employment increase in 2019 was with high-tech. And we saw some steady growth through the other sectors as well. Taxable sales, let's see, I think that's on the next slide. See how services have been kind of increasing over time, and we're at 33% in 2019. I expect with 2020 we're going to see quite a change in that with the situation with COVID, but we'll have to wait and see. Going on to the next slide. On the charts where we were doing the quality of life indicators from the National Citizen Survey, we used to show these gauges, and we decided instead to show these charts that show the trend over time with each of those. So we got rid of the dials, and for instance, we show here overall traffic flow on major Wichita streets on the bottom of the slide here. We saw, probably due to the amount of construction in Wichita, as dollars have been moved from work on Kellogg construction, more orange cones going up all over the city, and so maybe that's affecting people's attitude about traffic flow in the city. Going on to the next slide. Again, with the CIP, we used to show just the current division by priority for each of the CIPs just for the current year. Now we are showing the trend over time for the last 5 years. And for instance, transportation, you see how much that has changed with kind of the emphasis away from the Kellogg construction. And that 33% though, you probably won't see that change too much, because that actually represents special assessments for development in new areas, which we acknowledge, in order to continue growing, we wouldn't expect all growth to occur in the central area or in already developed areas. So that may be as good as it gets there, but we are meeting much more the goals and priorities of the comprehensive plan. Next slide, on page 11, again, we got rid of the dials, and this is showing county infrastructure, the roads and bridges, and 2018, for instance, on lane miles, not as much was done there because very wet weather that year that prevented them from doing their usual amount, but they were able to kind of catch back up. On bridge sufficiency, hopefully those numbers continue to improve as they replace bridges that no longer have sufficiency, and they do have a pretty extensive program regularly reviewing those. Hopefully they don't find any more insufficient structures. Okay, then we did formally create an appendix for this. We moved the two maps, the Wichita Future Land Use Guide and the 2035 Urban Growth Areas map to the appendix. The map in there does not reflect the changes that the MAPC approved and adopted for the comprehensive plan because that is still going through the process of approval with the governing bodies. Yesterday, the Board of County Commissioners did approve that, as well as the change to the Unified Zoning Code with the urban areas of influence. But the two maps do give a context for how and why the data is compiled, and they also tend to not change from one report to the next. So we thought moving them to the appendix and getting the information that is changing more up front was a good idea. And then also the matrices that follow give detailed data from which much of the report is derived and which we monitor to measure the community investments plan progress. And with that, I'll stand for questions. And though I will say we are looking for you to accept the Community Investments Plan 2020 monitoring report and make a finding that no amendments, extensions, or additions to the Community Investments Plan are necessary at this time.
Do you have any questions? Yes, Mr. Warren.
Move to approve staff's recommended action.
Mr. Foster?
I'll wait for a second, now I've got a discussion question.
I'll second it.
Warren with the motion, Hartman with the second, and Mr. Foster, you have a question?
If you look at the footnote for the National Citizen Survey results, it notes that 1,400 are randomly selected Wichita residents, and the return is 300 surveys. You know, the county, I know this is for City of Wichita, county's at 516,000 roughly, and what, city is 350 plus?
389,000.
389, okay. And then you factor in that they're allowing for a 5% plus or minus margin error. I remember looking at this last year and really not understanding the negative sentiment that was coming out of it. So my question for staff is, you know, just because that's where you can get some data and that's the way you've always done it, for 16 of the factors in here, I don't see this data as that great. If you were to look at it and wiggle the 5% around, it could easily change all of this. So again, pointed discussion, I don't see a lot of value in this citizen survey. Maybe it's the DAB boards that ought to be consulted or some other methodology but I just don't see a lot of good data out of this survey.
Well,
I do support the motion, though.
One thing I would say about the National Citizen Survey, in addition to a polling of citizens of Wichita, you also get with it a comparison of how you're doing with the same survey from other cities. And so, yeah, you may say that the opinion reflected you take with a grain of salt in terms of the community, but then how are we stacking up with the same kind of questions from other communities? And I do think that is valuable. Maybe that's something we focus on more.
Any other comments? Hearing none. We do have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and we'll see part of you next week. We're adjourned.